So before we start, I'd like to talk about the method that we're using to retain the zeolite. This is the zeolite right here. It looks like sand. It has the consistency of sand, but it's made of spheres, tiny little spheres, about 0.5 millimeters in diameter, and the whole idea is to keep them contained while the air flows through the sieve canister. This screen will contain them. They won't fall through it because this is an 80 mesh screen. You can use 80 mesh or 100 mesh or 120 mesh. I have another video where I explain the different mesh. Mesh is basically, the number refers to something like sandpaper. The higher the number, the smaller the openings are between the wires. So let's start over here. I'm going to start by with this piece right here. This is going to be, so the sieve, on this diagram, this is the bottom of the sieve. This is where the air comes in. This is the top of the sieve. This is where the oxygen comes out. So this part right here is this, okay? And I'm going to put the screen inside. It's a little bit tricky, but it's not impossible. So what you want to do is, when you cut it to the same size as the outside diameter, as close as possible. And it's okay if it's just a tiny bit smaller, but it should be about the same size. When you're putting it in, what I do is I place it on top like this, and then I take another fitting that fits inside, inside of it, loosely. So with this on top, you place the fitting on top of it, centered, and then you slowly and evenly push down like this, so that it eventually bottoms out, okay? And what you end up with is like a cup. The edges of the screen cup up a little bit, so that gives you a really nice sealed edge, and it's strong, and it's not going to go anywhere. You can push down and make little circles so that the edge gets all flattened out. It's a good idea to go back and put some super glue on a few spots around the edges. What this will do is this will hold it in place and make sure it doesn't shift. All you have to do is just basically touch it. It's just a little dab here and a little dab there. It'll cure, and it will hold it in place. And because it's a screen, it's going to go through it and attach to the plastic. I would say about every maybe half an inch or something. Try not to put too much, because super glue, the more you put, the longer it takes for it to cure. It doesn't like to have so much quantity, but this will work. Okay. Now, this part goes into the bottom of the sieve. Actually, what we do is we put this first, and then this goes inside of it, like this. And then one of these fittings will go on top of it. This fitting will seal everything. Now you have a screen that keeps the zeolite in place, and it'll be sealed, and it'll give you a place to attach a fitting. Sometimes these stick a little bit. So, as I was saying, sometimes it sticks when it goes inside, because the way these are sized, sometimes this is just a little bit too big. What you can do is get a knife and score the edge a little bit to make it smaller, or take a file, or maybe some sandpaper. You don't have to take too much, just a little bit, just enough to make it fit properly. As long as it can go all the way to the bottom, then we're good. So what we're going to do is first glue this to the pipe. It doesn't matter which end, they're both the same. Now this pipe, when it was cut, the edge is pretty sharp, okay? I've seen a lot of guys glue fittings to pipe immediately after they cut it without doing anything to the edge. That's not really recommended. What's recommended is that you ease the edge over a little bit. I'm using a deburring tool and I go over it, and it makes the edge not so sharp. The reason for this is if the edge is too sharp, when you fit it into the pipe with the glue, this edge is going to scrape a lot of the glue off of here and push it to the back, and it's not going to fill in the gaps between the two pieces. When you ease it over like this, it's going to make sure that the glue kind of goes into the separation between each piece. So as you can see, this tool actually works pretty well. You can also use a file or a sander. It might actually be easier. This tool is really handy. It's not very expensive. It's a deburring tool. It's good for the inside as well. For the inside, you just go over this way. And for the outside, it's a little bit trickier on the outside. It works good on big pipe. It doesn't work so well on small pipe from the outside. Okay, I'm going to use this side. I've already sanded it actually with my sander. So before I use the glue, I'm going to put some gloves on. It's always a good idea to wear gloves because some of those adhesives can be pretty strong. They're not good for your skin. There are all kinds of warnings. I'm going to be using this glue. This is a water-based glue, which is unusual for PVC glue. It's less toxic. It doesn't have nearly as much odor as normal PVC glue, and it's a one-step, which means that you don't have to put primer first and then the glue. This is, primer is really a solvent, and its purpose is to soften up the plastic. The adhesive has solvent and fillers in it, and its purpose is to basically melt the plastic, let it fuse together, and then the filler will fill in any gaps between the pipe and the fitting. So, without further ado, this is a really handy tool. I found it at Lowe's, I believe. It's made by the same company that makes these fittings. I believe, I think it's OT. But it, as you can see, it works really well. These can sometimes get really tight. So I'm going to move this out of the way. Make sure you're working on a surface that you're not worried about it getting stained with adhesive. Once the adhesive cures, it's probably going to stay. It's not going anywhere. So I'm going to be gluing these two together, okay? The glue, with small pipe, you normally put the glue on the male end only. With large pipe, you have to put the glue on the male end and on the female end. But what you need to do is put more on the male end and less on the female end. So put a lot of glue on the male end, and then just a little bit of glue on the female end. Because it's a big pipe, it needs a lot of filler to fill in the gap between the sizes. And then what you can see, and then remember that this has to go in 2 inches. So when you're putting the glue, put 2 inches of glue on, and make sure it's really nice and saturated all the way around and evenly. You have to work pretty quick because this stuff cures fast. So whatever glue is remaining on my brush, I'm gonna just coat the surface really quick. And then you put them together, put a lot of force, and put a little bit of twisting motion, if you can. It's just a quarter twist. That will save you a lot of, that will make sure that the glue is distributed all the way around, and it will give you a better seal. It's always a good idea to wipe off whatever excess while it's still wet. It'll give you a nice clean finish, and it'll cure better. And again, this glue, as long as it's still wet, it's actually water soluble, so it's water cleanup, which is nice. Okay? And you can see inside, I'm seeing glue around the edge, which is really good, but not a lot of it. You know, there's some there, which means that it's filled the whole entire space, but it's not dripping everywhere, which is nice. I'm going to let this cure for a while before I glue the other part, just to make sure it's resting. This piece is now ready to actually place inside. I can go ahead and put it in place. So make sure that the screen is on the inside of this piece. This is the piece right here. It's a snap-in drain cover. So we went. This is unchanged. We just filed the edge a little bit to make it a little bit smaller so it fits better. But we had to go from here to this by cutting the edge and sanding it down so that it fits inside of this piece. It has to fit inside here. So these are the finished pieces. I have another video where I show you how to do this part. We'll do that in another video. For now, we're just going to use this piece. And this one basically just slides all the way inside, push it in as far as it'll go until it bottoms out. If it doesn't bottom out, that means this might be just a little bit too big. So once it bottoms out, okay, now we're ready to glue on this piece. And again, a lot of glue on the male end, just a little bit of glue on the female end. And I start with the male end first. Make sure it's even all the way around. There are no empty gaps. Okay. And just a tiny, I'm going to take some of this glue off and just a tiny little bit around the inside of this. Just really quick. And again, try to push it in place and give it just a quarter twist while you're doing it. It helps distribute the glue and gives you a better seal. And then wipe off the excess while it's still wet with a paper towel. Okay. This end is basically finished. It's sealed. I'm going to let this cure overnight, just to make sure there are no hints of fumes remaining before we put the zeolite inside. So this is ready to go. Now, on the top end, on the top end of the sieve, you'll see that this end is a little more complicated. There's a spring inside, and there's a piece that's been modified, the screen, and there's this piece, which is a piece of filter. This is basically a piece of this stuff. It's called vent filter. And the purpose of this piece is to seal the edge. These are we basically went from this to this. It was trimmed, sanded, cut. As you can see, this is much thinner than it was before. This is probably the most work that it's going to take in this whole piece to create this piece. This is going to act like a piston. It's going to be pushing on the zeolite inside. The zeolite this goes on top of here, This goes on top of the pipe. It's filled with zeolite up to about maybe a 1/4 inch below the top edge. You have to vibrate it to make sure the zeolite settles and gets packed. And then this piece goes on top. First you place the filter media, and then you center it and push it on top over the zeolite. Okay? On top of this goes the spring, and then the remaining pieces. For now, I'm just going to glue this piece to the top of the pipe. And again, I want to make sure my edge is nice and rounded. It's not too sharp. As you notice now, I'm using the blade to do this. There are many ways of doing this. You can use a spoon, you can use a blade, you can use sandpaper, you can use a file. These are some of the skills you learn when you're young and you're helping your dad around the house. Okay. Now remember, once I place this in place, it's not gonna seal the pipe just yet. After everything dries, I'm gonna wash the inside before I actually fill it with zeolite. I'll wash it, let it dry really good before the zeolite is placed in place. Put in place. So again, we put the glue. So I'll be putting on this surface and on this surface. This is the dauber, I believe. Make sure it's even all the way around. And you're going 2 inches into the pipe. Okay. And then again, I'll do just a quick run around this, just to make sure it has something. Okay, and then again we push all the way in and then give it a 1/4 of a twist. I'm going to put my weight on it so as far as it can go. Alright, and let's clean off all the excess. This is where it's really nice to be wearing gloves. Alright, so now this is ready for the next step. Again, I'm going to let it cure overnight. This way, whatever fumes escape are not going to be trapped in with the zeolite. Alright. Now the next piece that we can glue now is this is the end piece that threads on top of the cap. This is the cap that closes it. And remember, we have to put the screen, the spring, and then the cap on top of it. What goes into the cap is this fitting. It's similar to the one we used at the bottom. And this has to be glued in here, and that will give us the fitting, it will seal it, and then the threads will seal the entire canister. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these together. Make sure it's nice and clean. And again, this is a one-step glue. There's no need to put primer. You just put glue. on the middle end first, and make sure you put quite a bit. This is a little messy, so make sure you're working somewhere where you don't mind making a mess. Also, it's recommended that you make sure you have good ventilation where you're working. It's nice to be, it's a good idea to have a door open or something, or do it outside, because the fumes can be bad for you. Okay, this is ready. Again, push all the way in. And then give it just a little, try to give it just a little bit of a twist. Sometimes it doesn't want to twist, especially with really big pipe. With smaller pipe, it's easy to do that, but with really big pipe, sometimes it doesn't want to twist. But that's okay. That means that it's a really tight fit. There's not going to be any gaps where you won't have adhesive filling in. All right, when I look on the inside, it went all the way in. That's good. So this is ready. And again, this is also going to sit overnight to make sure that we don't have any more fumes. Everything is evaporated out of it. Okay. Thank you.